because the thing I want to speak about tonight is free will. And what Brian said, just for the audience at home, is he's asking a question about the meditation practice that we just finished. And he said that if I'm paying attention to my breath and my attention wanders, and then I have the intention to bring my attention back to my breath, didn't I exercise free will? And the answer to that is no. And this is why this whole business of free will is so challenging. Exactly why Brian asked that question, because it appears to be so much the case that free will exists. And that's why I want to talk about it. And one of the reasons I want to talk about it is recently I've been studying an Advaita teacher who was a student of Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he became a teacher of Advaita, and in his teaching, he puts a lot of emphasis on determinism, which is the absence of free will. And he says that everything is predetermined. The movie was made and put in the can before it started, and nothing is happening that doesn't happen by the will of God. And he uses the idea of the will of God, which makes it even worse for a lot of people, right? Because it takes them into all kinds of trips about, does God allow babies to die? You know, does God allow all the crazy, terrible things to go on in the world? But the reason he says it that way is he says that in the essence of all religions, if you look into it, the essence of all religions is thy will be done. It's there in the Bible, and it's there in the essence of all religions. And yet it's overlooked in most religions. And so it's there, but one of the reasons it's overlooked is because it is so inconsistent with the way things appear. So inconsistent with the way things appear. We talk about a non-duality, and we say that the essence of these Advaita teachings is not two, meaning that the you that you have considered yourself to be real, the you that you have considered to be the thinker of your thoughts, doesn't exist. That's hard enough, right? That the you that you considered yourself to be doesn't exist, and you're not physical, and you're not a physical body. And of course, in these teachings and practices, we break all that down, so it becomes easier to actually see, because the ideas that are being spoken of here are concepts, and concepts are not true, right? Concepts are not true. So these concepts are pointers to the truth, and if you pursue these teachings, you look at what the concepts point to. But you don't look at what the concepts point to unless you accept the concepts. And a lot of people don't get past that. They just don't accept the concepts. And the idea of there not being any free will is a concept that a lot of people just don't accept. And therefore, they don't look beyond the concept to see what is actually the case. You know, one of the most difficult things, and this is one of the reasons that I'm bringing free will up, because I'm assuming you all, especially those of you who have been coming to class for a while now, that you all have a sense of the possibility here, and you all want to realize the possibility, right? You want to be free. You want to realize enlightenment or self-realization, which you're not going to do, by the way. That's never going to happen.
The will is God's will.
Well. Well, you know, that's true. That's true. It will happen if it's God's will, right? But when I say it's never going to happen, I know who I'm talking to here. Right? And who I'm talking to, it ain't never going to happen for. Okay? That's why I'm saying.
You're judging.
So, but you see, the thing is this. To release yourself from the constant illusion that you're a person, you know, which is what you're up to here, which is what we're using meditation to practice, is a difficult thing to do. And then to maintain that that kind of awareness, right? To maintain the truth and sustain that truth is a difficult thing to do. The idea that you as an ego, as a person, are an actor, that you're a doer, is the essence of where you're attached to the idea of being a person. It's the essence of it, right? That's why the mind reacts to the idea that you don't have any free will. Because when you're told you don't have any free will, the very essence of the identification with the personality is being challenged. The very essence. It's saying that how can you be a doer? How can you do anything if you don't exist? Right? But the thing about that makes it challenging is the implication, right? Well, wait, if I don't exist, and now this doesn't get necessarily said, but this is where the mind's coming from. Oh, wait, if I don't exist, then everything I ever accomplished in my life, I never accomplished, right? If I don't exist, everything that I did wrong that I feel guilty about, I didn't do. If I don't exist, then that means other people don't exist either, and I can't hold them responsible for anything. So the implications really upset the whole apple cart, right? Nothing can happen. This is one of the things that this teacher says. Balsakar is his name. Nothing can happen without God's will. It has to be the will of God for anything to happen. Now watch. This gets interesting if you really take it apart. So your concern is that you are not the doer. And if your concern is that you're not the doer, then in terms of this idea of wanting to be enlightened or self-realized, no possibility. How can you? Right? Because you're not the doer. You can't do it. Right? So that pulls that rug out from under you, right? And then all the other implications, that come up in terms of not being the doer. If I can't be the doer, how do I live? How do I live? That's such an intense aspect of the illusion of being a person that it doesn't make any sense that I'm not the doer, right? But now watch. Okay, so what is the doer if I'm not the doer, right? Well, Ramesh Balsekar uses the word God. He says that God is the source. Thy will be done, right? God is the source. But here from our conversations that you could replace that word. That's a dangerous word, so we don't use it too much here. You could replace that word with awareness, right? Consciousness, right? You could replace isness, Muji calls it, right? You could replace it with those things, right? Or the source, right? You could replace it with the word the source. So what is the source? Come on now, don't let me down. Huh?
Awareness, consciousness.
And what is awareness and what is consciousness?
Nothing.
And what is nothing?
Everything.
And what is everything? Inconceivable. What is inconceivable? Come on now, this is what you are. Right? Isn't that what we've been talking about here? That you're the source? That you are awareness? Right? We hesitate to say that you're God because that gets a little crazy for people, right? But don't worry about it. That your awareness, your consciousness, you're the source, right? And not only that, but what is said in these teachings is that's all there is. Non-dual, right? No subject and object. Only thing that exists is what's happening, and that's the source. And that's what you are. I am that. Nisargadatta wrote a famous book called I Am That, right? Now watch. If that's the case, and we're saying that you have no free will, and we say, then where is the free will? What did I say? Thy will be done. So who's got the free will? Now look, do you notice that we just went around in a circle? Right? So you see, there's no need to freak out about it, right? Because the free will that exists is actually the will of who you really are, right? That helps the mind calm down a little bit, right? It's the will of who you really are. What doesn't have free will is who you think you are, okay? And if you look at it this way, one of the things that Ramesh says about it is, you don't have free will, but you do have free will. What does that mean? Well, you don't have any free will about thinking that you have free will. You follow that? You don't have any free will. You don't get to choose to think that you have free will. That's part of what you don't have free will about, okay? But there's a functional aspect of that, because the idea that you think you have free will allows you to either choose as the person or as the source. That's the free will. To choose as the person or as the source. If you choose as the person, the choice is coming from your DNA and your conditioning, right? If you choose from the source, the choice is coming from awareness itself. Infinite knowledge and wisdom, right?
So awareness makes choices.
Well, now you're taking it to the next step, right? Because I said if you go to make a choice, you can either make it from the person, which means your conditioning in your DNA, which is unique to each person, right? Which is not real, which doesn't actually exist, okay? And if you make it from there, right, based on your own experience, if you make it from there, it usually doesn't go well, does it? Okay? Or you can make it from the source, okay? However, I've just said that there's two, didn't I? The person and the source. But that's supposed to not be true. Is your head spinning yet? So if that's not true, if non-duality is the truth, right, then there isn't two, right? Which means that God actually created your DNA and conditioning, right? Separated it from its source, right? And then gave you the opportunity to make choices that will eventually bring you back into the source.
So until we become the source, then we are
No.
making choices.
Yeah, but now watch, you see. She said until we become the source. No.
Become one with the source.
No, you don't become one with the source. You never were anything but the source. Right? So what Ramesh says about this is that the free will that you think you have is counterfeit. Right? Because it's not really your free will. It was a setup all along. Right?
So God has a really wretched sense of humor.
Well, who thinks that? What? Yeah. See? Who thinks that? And if the one who thinks that makes choices, I don't want to be on your team. You see? So if you make choices that aren't aligned with the source, things aren't going to work out. That's when your prayers don't get answered. And when you make choices that are aligned with the source, things work out because you're choosing to make choices that are in alignment with reality, with the truth, with the source. Far into it. Do you know what you're going to think next? Well, so if you don't know what you're going to think next, it just goes to show that your thoughts are coming from your conditioning. They're coming from your DNA. Your awareness of your own thoughts, right, doesn't recognize the source of the thoughts. That's why you have to look to see what you think. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal. If you start, now you've been, part of your conditioning is to pay attention to what's going on as if you're doing it, right? That's the ordinary way that you live your life and the ordinary way that you perceive things, right? Here's the deal. Just try paying attention to what's going on with the idea that you're not the source and see if you can see what's happening there. You've said it to me in terms of if I didn't move from Virginia to here, if I didn't join the health club, if I didn't get interested in this, I would have never met you, right? That's looking at things as they actually occur. Not that you did it, you didn't do it. It happened. It just happened like that. Because if you try and practice what I just said, the ego will keep coming in and say, yes, but.
Yeah.
See? But if you really pay attention and you keep looking to check and see what's true, what's actually happening, not what you think. You can't use thinking for this. You can't use the mind for this because the mind doesn't get this. But if you actually pay attention to what's happening, you can begin to see the truth. You can begin to see what's actually happening. You know, Ramesh shared an example of this. he was doing a seminar in Aspen, Colorado. And when he went to start the seminar, he said, none of us had any choice about being anywhere tonight except right here, just like this, right? And when he said that, somebody in the audience started laughing out loud. And then the guy who was laughing out loud said, oh, I'm very sorry. He said, let me explain why I'm laughing. He said, I got on a plane on the East Coast to come to Denver after a business trip. And I was sitting next to a guy who was reading a book that he was very intently involved with. And I found it interesting that he was so involved with this book. And I didn't get anything to read because I was in a hurry to get on the plane. And I kept noticing this guy put his finger in between the pages and sit back and close his eyes and then open the book again and be very intent. He said at one point the guy got up to go to the bathroom and I couldn't help myself. I picked the book up to see what he was reading. Well, he was reading one of Ramesh's books, the guy who was the teacher, right? And so he started reading the book and he got really into it, really involved with the book. And he never noticed that the guy came back from the bathroom and was sitting there and he was reading the guy's book. So when he did notice it, he said to the guy, oh, I'm sorry, I picked your book up. I was just interested in what you were so involved with. I started reading and I got really involved with it. So the guy said to him, well, that's okay. He said, I've read the book several times, don't worry about it. He said, you can keep the book. Go ahead and read it. So the guy kept reading the book and he was about halfway through the book and they're getting closer to Denver and he said to him, you know, this is amazing. This is amazing what I'm reading in this book. I want to meet this author. And the guy said, well, I'm on my way to meet him right now. He's giving a seminar in Aspen. And the guy said, oh, that's interesting. I have a few days off. Can I come with you? So he went with him. He went to the seminar and that's why he left. He's sitting there, and he said, now I have my new friend here, and I'm at the seminar. So when you look at things like that, you can see the actuality of how things happen, the cascading of things, right? So it was either that, or it was that he just decided to come to the seminar, you see? But that's the ego stepping in and taking responsibility for what's happening. Now look at it this way. If you do accept this truth, and you do pay attention, and you do begin to see what's actually happening, and you do let go of the idea that you're the doer, right? That you have free will. Look at the life that you will be leading. All of the things in the past that you felt guilty about will disappear. You never did any of that, right? But at the same time, all the things that you take responsibility for having accomplished will disappear. You never did any of that. But you can't blame anybody else because if there's no free will for you, there's no free will for them. This is what gave me the ability to work with the prisoners in the prisons, right? Because I was talking to innocent people all the time. Now, in our society, that's not going to fly, right? So according to society, you're responsible for your actions, right? But whether or not that's the case because of the dualistic world we live in is one thing, but in reality is another thing. This is what Jesus Christ said when he talked to the soldiers who nailed him on the cross, and he said, forgive them for they know not what they do, right? They had no free will. They had no choice about doing what they did. So it's a whole different world. If you allow yourself to go there, it's a whole different world. What's the difference between a sage and an ordinary person? We typically think a sage is somebody who knows they're not their body, right? We think a sage is somebody who knows they're not their personality, not their name. But don't they answer to their name when they're called? Don't they relate to their body? Don't they wash it and feed it and take care of it? Well, why? If they're not their body and they're not their name, why? Because even though they know the truth, they continue to identify with name and form, body and personality, right? Because they're in the world, right? But the difference between a sage and other people is they know they're not the source. They know they have no free will. They're living their life as an expression of the source. This is true enlightenment. This is true enlightenment because you don't have to worry about anything. It's in God's hands. Or it's in the source's hands. Or it's in awareness's hands, right? But remember, who is the source? See, that's where people get a little concerned. Well, if it's out of my hands, right? If it's in God's hands, then anything can happen. Maybe what will happen is what I don't want to happen, right? But who is the source? You are. So you're just playing games with yourself. You're playing games with yourself. Now, the other thing that can help to get this is that the idea that there is a world out there and that there's other people is an appearance, right? This is part of the teaching. It's an appearance. Right? You're everything. That's right. Everything is an appearance, right? Including you, the body and the person. It's all an appearance, right? It's called Layla in the teachings, right? That helps to deal with the concerns that people have about, well, if there's no free will, then God must really be a prick to allow some of the things that are going on in the world, right? But the thing that you have to get about this, and this is another thing that's very hard for people to digest, it's just an appearance. When you see the truth, when you realize the truth, there is no death. There is no death. It's just an appearance. Nothing's really happening. So you can really relax and enjoy life. It's just a movie. Now, you know, I went over a lot of concepts here that Ramesh takes hours to talk about, right? But I don't want to keep you too long against God's will. But the reality of it is that these concepts need to be taken and looked at very seriously and understood and accepted, and then use your ability to see what I'm pointing to recognize that it is the case. And if you do that, along with paying attention to the fact that there is no real person, right? God's will and your will may come together, and you may become enlightened. Do you get it? Don't think about it. If you think about it, you'll just go right back into the toilet. Well, you'll go back into the toilet anyway. I watched a good movie last night about a paid assassin, right? Forget the name of it. It was really good. About this guy that was an expert assassin that planned everything out in great, great detail, right? He considered himself to be, you know, the best, right? So he would have his high-powered rifle with the scopes and had planned everything out the way it's going to happen. So he took one shot and he would get the kill, right? So, and he answered to this guy who was his kind of boss. Anthony Hopkins played his boss, right? And so they showed him do these jobs that were perfect, right? And then he gets this assignment to kill this person, and he has to set it all up. So he's in a window, and the car's going to come down the street, and he has one shot. So he takes the shot, and the car spins out of control and hits a van where there's a woman and some children walking. The van blows up, and the woman and children catch on fire and are burning to death. And he sees this, and it blows his mind. He turns away, and he's upset. Now, this is a cold, calculating expert, right? Turns away, and he's upset, right? Now, remember what we're talking about here, no free will, right? He thinks he's in charge. He thinks he's in charge. But he didn't expect to be upset when he saw these people burning, right? So he calls Anthony Hopkins, and Anthony Hopkins said, "Did you get the job done?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "But I'm really upset and troubled. There was some people there, and they caught on fire, and it was horrible." So Anthony Hopkins says, "Collateral damage, part of the job," right? Right after that, Anthony Hopkins hired 3 other assassins to kill him because he was no longer accountable. He became emotional. It's a good movie. Okay, enough for one night, right?